Welcome to the paranormal and metaphysical world of Twilight tonight. Host DeeDee Moonflyer grew up with very open-minded parents who had many experiences with UFOs and the paranormal. Because of her mom's insistence on exposing her to spiritual classes, meditation, and teachings of Edgar Cayce, DeeDee had a fascination and deep interest in the paranormal. Her own paranormal experiences have led her to seek out and interview other fascinating, knowledgeable people for better understanding of this phenomenon. Now, your host of Twilight Tonight, DeeDee Moonflyer.
Happy Friday, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to WLTK-DB, Twilight Tonight. Tonight, I have one of my favorite guests, and I love interviewing him, and I thought it'd be fun to have him back. And I have some questions that people want to know, and he has written extraordinary books. He's written an Experiencer's Gardener, and a true story of extraterrestrial contact. Please welcome back Wes G. Roberts. Hi, Wes.
Hello. Hello, DeeDee. It's really my pleasure to be here. I love being on this show. You know it, though.
Thank you. I love having you. I thought tonight would be interesting with everything I'm hearing from audiences from both podcasts. And I had some people reach out to me from Twilight Tonic Paranormal Podcast, a couple questions about other people's experiences. Well, and I know you talk to a lot of people because of your experiences, a lot of abductees or experiencers or people who have come in contact just seeing them. And I know there are hundreds and thousands of people that have come out lately. How do you feel when they contact you? What are you doing to reach out to them?
So I feel great. I feel privileged if people decide to take me in their trust, even if it's just to ask a simple question. Often they're so inhibited by fear that I think it helps them to talk to me or approach me before doing the full Monty, meaning if they need hypnosis before going down that road. So they might want to ask me about what it is I've experienced, or they might sort of, in a couple of cases, break down in front of me saying, I couldn't tell anyone else. You have no idea what I've been through. And I don't want to paint this whole picture with one brush. It's not a horror movie, the whole thing. They're just, little pieces of it for some people are difficult to get through. For myself, mostly positive, as I've said before, but the negative experiences will stay with you, and they could sort of block you from moving forward. So we kind of fear, and I know that sounds like a cliche, but we tend to fear the possibility of finding out more than what will actually happen if we find out.
Right. I find it so interesting when people do approach, and they've approached me because of my shows and my interest in things like that and my experiences. And they're coming out so much since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
People are more up to come in and say, oh yeah, I've seen a UFO. I've had these experiences. I've had sleep paralysis and I don't know what's going on. How often do you hear them say they have sleep paralysis where they can't?
Yeah, they did. And they don't know even how to describe it at times. They do say they're paralyzed. Sometimes they do say they couldn't move. So this catatonic state, I guess is what it's called. It does tend to immobilize people because I think in a lot like out-of-the-body experiences, the capability of moving around when you were having one of these experiences could endanger you.
And is there a reason that you would say that? Is it because they're doing medical things to you, or is it just how they have to communicate with you in general, the energy that it takes for them to come in?
I can only speak to my own experience, but they seem to, at least in my case, alter the conditions around me, or alter the conditions within me. I wish I knew what that meant. Physiological changes, I think of them as pressure changes as well. They alter the immediate surroundings, your immediate condition, in order to make this happen sometimes. And so I think it would probably be not be constructive to allow you total free movement. And it doesn't always work that way, but when it does, it's like, okay, talk about starting with terror, right? You can't move, so not a good way to start for some people.
Yeah, I can only imagine that feeling of not being able to get away, because our fear and flight kick in so fast when we can't move, and if you can't move, you have nowhere to go. So that's petrifying. I
kind of tell people to each their own, right? And maybe you've been through some of this too, is I just start to wiggle my little finger, or actually imagine that I can move my little finger. And then after repeated tries, I can move my little finger. And so that gets me, that snaps me out of some things. And I honestly wonder, DeeDee, whether I should snap myself out of this.
And I wonder if these people that have the sleep paralysis, what if you did snap out of it? What would you do then? And what would they look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. For my part, snapping out of it has meant that the what would it be? The communication, the interaction stops. And you know, you were going to have Lesley on tonight, but unfortunately it didn't work out. But Lesley would probably say, and I can't speak for her, that we're allowed to say no. I'm not saying that always works, but that's one of the things we went through in one of my sessions was you can't sleep, tell them no. So I'm not sure how effective that is. I'm sure some of your viewers will say, that doesn't work at all. I screamed my lungs out at them and they did what they want. But in my case, I was at least able to get periodically some rest by saying, we sleep, we don't respond well to these kinds of things, knock it off. So I don't know how viable that is for some folks.
And I also truly am amazed, like when you see drawings or pictures of the different races, and some of them look very frail. Do you think they have a fear of us like we do of larger animals as well?
Oh my gosh, now you're going to have to get me to speak my opinion.
But I like your opinion, Wes.
My opinion is they have good reason to be afraid of us. Not you and me specifically, not Todd specifically, who has a couple of questions for me later. Thank you. But I think that they have great reason to be fearful of us as a species. And I don't know if they apply Occam's razor, or if they apply any criteria and say, oh, wait a sec, let's be afraid of the species, but DeeDee's okay. Like, I don't know how they work that out, if they have that kind of thought process or not, because I don't think they need to be afraid of all of us. Some of us want the interchange.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Or some of us welcome the information they're trying to give us, even if we don't have that understanding of what it is.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I know, DeeDee, I've never had control, and maybe I'm stopping myself from having control over when I'm going to have an encounter. Like, they don't happen a lot right now. They happened a lot in the past. And then recently, Lesley and I talked to one of our friends, Grant Cameron. We interviewed him. Do you know Grant?
No, I haven't got a chance to talk to him, but I know who he is.
Yeah, so Grant gets pulled down these rabbit holes. He would say that himself. He gets pulled down these interesting rabbit holes all the time. And one of his recent books is about these devices that are called Kendras. You know that one, right?
Yeah. Go ahead and tell the audience a little bit about these cameras.
My understanding of them is a Kendra with an X is an artificial construct or a technological construct that certain alien species can create for us as a meeting place, time and space meeting place. So in my dialogue, so to speak, with some of my alien friends, they've chastised me for not being accessible enough or not being able to attain the proper state of mind to be in touch with them. But a Kendra, and I only know this mainly from Grant, a Kendra will allow, if I'm not mistaken, 8 to 10 individuals to enter this time-space portal, which is transparent in terms of its look, and immediately be in touch with aliens from other systems. And so I wish I had my personal Kendra, in other words.
Yeah, that's really, that's very interesting. It's almost like, it's like a cell phone for these beings, you know. That's what is, it's such a wide variety of information that we're getting now from people, like what he explains, the communication, how they stop communication. And I've talked to women when their childbearing years are done, it's less and less communication with them.
Oh, interesting. Not in a good way.
Yeah.
Not in a good way. If they're having a positive experience and it's not all about ovum and so forth, why not just extend this for their whole lives? That's what I would want. That, not just and it's of course not the same with men, because over the past year I've had at least one experience which was again seemed like an extraction, and they're no fun from my perspective. If they fake you out, in my case, they faked me out into thinking I'm with a woman, let's just say.
Yeah, I've heard several stories from people like that, where, they believe they're with somebody and it's not them. And I've also heard, and I'm sure you have, of women seeing their doctors and having surgeries and things like that. And then they feel like even though it's their doctor and they trust them in a dream like state, it's not their doctor. I've also heard things like that. So I find that really, really interesting.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, DeeDee. Of what interest anymore in biological material? What would they possibly need still?
Yeah, unless what's in your thought, unless it's only particular races of them that is still interested in our DNA, and some might be more interested in our spiritual beliefs.
Gosh, I'd like to hope that last part's true.
Me too.
I'd really like to hope that's true, because that's my interest. My interest in them is an expansion of what we can be as people, of what we can become, what we can evolve into. That's my interest. But evidently, I don't control their interest.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Wow. That's something to really think about as humans. Humans having contact with them. That's really something to think about. What if it were just science or spiritual? Those are two very dividing things in my head.
Yeah, I think very much the same. I really drive people away from me sometimes when I say that spirit's in the driver's seat for me. Spirit motivates me. And they think, that doesn't sound right. That's not scientific. Like, no, let scientists worry about that. I'm not that thing.
Yeah, and I think, too, of course, science is absolutely important, but to me an experiencer has a spiritual experience with this?
That's what I believe. That's what the aforementioned Grant Cameron believes, because he had a threshold experience many years ago. Completely switched him from simply reporting on what the White House has known about UFOs and aliens. Completely changed his mind. That was his thing. To that of the experiencer's journey, and it's taken him all over the world, meeting all sorts of interesting people. And he's just, his passion is just boom. If you get a chance to interview him, it is just boom. Just ask one question. That's all you need to do.
Wow.
It's true.
I might have to do that. It's really odd. When do you think, or at what age do most people start experiencing that you have heard? Is it childhood? Is it adolescence? For me, from people that have talked to me, it's childhood, and it runs through families. Do you find that to be very true with yourself?
I did once I started hypnosis. I had thought that was not true with me. But when you really dig deep and uncover things that you've been forbidden to remember, let's put it that way, you find out many enlightening things. Like, I thought my experiences started in my teens without anything to go on. I just had some peculiar things happen. So I thought, okay, I often say when I was 15 years old, that changed everything for me. But then first or second hypnosis session, it's like, oh yeah, you're a little kid, you're 4 or 5 years old, you're walking down the street with this thing. It's like, what? I didn't expect to hear it. It was not something I wanted. And it was like, that really creeps me out now. So physical abductions as such, which I don't always have, started in my childhood. And it was not something in my lexicon. It was not something in my worldview until it was uncovered. And then there was just tons of them all throughout my life. It's like, oh, great, thanks.
And I think as in childhood, they disguise themselves to things that we like and trust.
Yeah, you've probably gone through that. And I have a couple of times, like the doctor thing. The doctor thing. Yeah, I'm the doctor. Really? Your outfit doesn't fit.
Either does your voice.
Yeah. I don't know what that thing is, but it's not a stethoscope. So, but yeah, so the doctor thing is a big one. Doctors, nurses, kindly looking adults, people that you might know. Apparently, it's like tailored. At least this is my understanding. It's tailored or customized to each person.
Yes, I agree with that 100%. Yeah, I think that very much is true. It was weird because one of my childhood experiences, the first time I remember, and I've come out with this, gosh, about a year ago with people, is I loved puppets growing up. I'm a huge Jim Henson fan, always have been. And we lived in a second-story apartment. And I was 4 or 5. It was a year before my brother was born. And I specifically remember these puppets in the second-story window talking to me about weather patterns. And I thought as a kid, like, this is weird. How are you guys up here? But it's such a true, vivid memory. I've never forgotten that memory.
Puppets didn't frighten you then?
Puppets never frightened me. I loved them. I've loved them my whole life. I love puppets. And I identified with puppets as a kid. And I was huge into Sesame Street. Anything puppets, I loved. And still do. I love Jim Henson so much. But it was the weirdest experience ever because it didn't feel like anything I've ever felt as a kid. So that was the weirdest in the beginning experience.
It's interesting because just like in dreams, I think you might not pay attention if it's just some person out there passing by and they turn to say something to you. So it can't always be just some person. Sometimes it's got to be something significant. And then it's like, oh, okay, I'm listening. And I talked to one of my friends about this recently. She had an experience, and I said, try and imagine if in that experience, it wasn't your best friend, it wasn't your folks.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
would you have paid attention? And so same thing, I think, with you and puppets, and with me and doctors, and me and other little kids. It's like, well, a little kid's going to get my attention, a doctor's going to get my attention. But if it's just some guy in the back yelling something, it's like, probably not. So I think it's like, now that we've got your attention, we're going to engage.
Yeah. It was a weird, and I've never forgotten that. Like, it had stuck with me still to adulthood. And I still talk about it, whether it was them or just a really odd experience or a really odd dream. It didn't feel like a dream. I was very much reasoning as a kid, like, how are you guys up here? What are you doing? This is second story. How are you in my window?
So that's cool, because you were aware, you were lucid.
Yeah, as a kid.
Yeah, well, that doesn't always happen in these experiences. Half the time or a third of the time I become lucid, and they promptly end the experience because it's like, I'm not playing anymore. So I think it ticks them off. So folks out there, if you want to know how to tick them off, that's it.
Wake up.
Wake up, get wise to it, and they're going to think, damn, we had this going the way we wanted to until now.
And I wonder if just children in general are different, and they can work with children much easier. And as we become older, maybe it's a different experience for them, because children have no fear if it's something they're comfortable with. As an adult, if I saw that now, I'd be like, I'm gone. I'm out of here. That's no, that ain't no puppet.
That's so true, though, eh? But I think it's a result of everything we are now is a result of education, family, indoctrination, experiences, and biases, among the many. So that's what we're the result of. That's the end product. And a child hasn't gone through all that yet. And so they don't have to say, I need to unlearn that. I need to not apply those filters or that bias. That capability comes later. And then when it comes, that's probably why I have a hard time communicating with them sometimes. So they got these multi-layers of stuff in the way.
Yeah, exactly. That's so interesting. Yeah, as we become older, it is definitely a more frightening experience because of all those layers, I think.
I think so too. And I try to say to myself, be open, don't be fearful. For instance, if I think I'm going to have an out-of-the-body experience from a conscious state, I hate that. This doesn't work well for me. This is the catatonic thing, that you're paralyzed thing, and you're paralyzed so you can't act things out. But when I feel one coming on, I 9 times out of 10 will do everything possible to not let it happen.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah, definitely.
Well, then I lose out, right? I lose.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to go on a small break. When we come back, I have a couple questions from people for Wes. We'll be right back after our sponsors.
Heard a girl scream down here.
Are you kidding me right now?
I'm listening.
Doing very well. Thank you so much. We're back with Wes G. Roberts. Wes Howard. I'm so glad you're here, Wes. Hi, Christopher.
Me
Thank
too.
you for joining us tonight. I have a question from somebody. Todd
Sure.
Bates, actually. How do you feel about
Yes.
implants?
I have met one or two people. One really stands out, who had an implant in her arm. So kind of up here, you could feel the bump. Actually, you could feel the bump. And she was pretty shattered. So I don't know what she felt, except that she didn't like it all. And so I probably could put my foot on the film somewhere, but she had this film being taken out. And I think if I'm remembering correctly, when they took it out, it's this very intricate thing that wrapped itself around tissue and membrane and everything. And that's what they do. They integrate with your body pretty much, to be almost part of the structure. So they took it out and they stored it in some kind of liquid, which I think they were to learn later was the absolute wrong way to store it because it disintegrated. And it's not the first time I've heard of this. It was Lear that used to do a lot of this work, Dr. Lear. And I don't think it was Dr. Lear that took this out of her arm, but I don't remember. Anyhow, it was filmed and she became a happy camper. I was there when she was put under hypnosis, however, before it was taken out. And this is the same time I was filmed under hypnosis. That never aired anywhere, actually, never came to light, but I was under hypnosis and filmed, and she was under hypnosis and filmed, and she was just wailing. I mean, she was hugely upset about her lot in life. So I do not know what happened after it was removed. I and Lesley, or Lesley and I, were standing by hoping she'd be back in touch with us, but I think it was like, stop. This is all I want to do with this, end of story. So I think in answer to Todd's question, I don't know that I have any, but people vary in what they say about them. Some say it's a control mechanism. Others say it's a listening mechanism. I don't mean just a voice, but to what we do, to what we say, to what we experience. Others say it's a homing mechanism so that they can keep tabs on you. I don't know actually what it is. As far as I know, I don't have one, but those are the prevailing theories. Maybe DeeDee, you have some more theories on that.
My mom was really into those. She was more into like the ones that kind of look like seeds. She had read about that she actually found on her body a few times, she had told me. So to me, I'm not really sure about them. I only go by what she told me. And then I've also heard of the disintegrating ones and the really fine ones that people find in their body. And she said a couple of times that she had found strange things on her body when she lived in upstate New York. So it was before I was born. So that I'm not sure about.
I remember this, if not this piece, DeeDee, another piece was analyzed and it went to a lab and all that stuff. And I have this somewhere in my emails. One of the metals was not from Earth, was the basic conclusion, not identifiable.
Wow, that's kind of creepy. That's kind of, I wouldn't say creepy, but a little alarming. If it's not from here, where, I'm so curious to where and how and why.
Me too. And, as to where they're stored on one's person, to use that term. I don't know what term to use. Todd's saying in their stomachs. I haven't heard of that. In their arms, yes. Wrists, yes. Nasal cavity, yes.
Yeah, my mom said arms and thigh.
Oh, thigh too. Okay.
Yeah.
Where you might not feel it at first, right?
Yeah, I would assume not. She was very adamant about that. She talked about her experiences up to the 3 days before she passed. It kept coming.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
that's really a profound thing for her to do and for you to say. That is absolutely profound. It's like, what, do I need to plan for my exit, and how will I be? And I don't want to veer off the show's topic, but I do think about things like that.
I think all humans must,
Hmm.
It's a real thing everyone has to go through, and it's a kind of a scary thought that for her to talk about that all the way up to that time was, to me, very interesting.
I of course didn't know your mom, but I'm thinking, I'm going to open my eyes on the other side and continue the journey.
Yeah. And I do have a question from Scott76. It says, I have a serious question. What have yourself learned from your experiences?
So what have I learned about my own experiences? That I was supposed to remember who I was, or what I was. I was given that challenge pre-birth, part of a contract that I was required to remember at some point. Man, it took me a long time, decades and decades, right? But that I was required to consciously say yes, to say yes, to say I'm in, to say that is part of me, and to explore it, and then to add context to it. So what happens, to what end after you say yes, I agree, or after you say yes, I remember. And this is partly to what end? The doing this kind of speaking or sharing. The other part is, I'm pretty sure, to profoundly change and to push the limits of what we normally think we can do as people, and to understand that, or to ask a question that, what if you had unbelievable powers that were not simply human? What would you do with them? And I think that is probably my mission.
That's good. And then I got L Spring ask, I have a lot of questions, she says.
Okay.
Are aliens friendly is one. And I want to know if you got to go on their spaceship.
So I'd say the short answer to both questions is yes. I think I'm involved with maybe 3 species. This is just gut feeling. At least 2 distinct species. And the main species I've been involved with, whether one calls them Nordics or tall whites, I am not sure. They'd never come to me and said, hi, I'm a tall white, I'm a Leo. Purple is my favorite color. So they haven't done that, damn it. But the ones I primarily deal with, in particular one who I call my twin, absolutely, positively wants to see me maximize who and what I can be. And I don't see a mean bone, and I'm going to say her body, because she appears to me as feminine. She is 100% behind my development and my growth. And when we did some hypnosis sessions, we plugged into her and her world in real time for a while. And Lesley asked her questions through me, and she answered all sorts of interesting questions. And I think I told you before, DeeDee, I challenged her on emotions. Maybe yeah. And it's like, boom, wave of emotions. How does that work? Does that work, Wes? Are you flat now? Are you disabled? And I was. Her emotions were so strong. So I think it depends on the species. My understanding is that there are more positive races than not. My understanding is that there are races that vie, so to speak, to interfere with the world, with us, some in a good way, some in a not so good way. And as far as being on the ships, half a dozen times. This happened, a lot of my experiences happened through dreams, and I think that's one of the things Todd was asking about in his thread. I can see off to the side. I've been on ships, I've seen panels, I've seen them doing busy work in front of panels that we don't have now. I don't recognize them. They might be flat, like tablets and so forth, or phones, but they can be transparent. I never detected a temperature on any ship. I never detected a light source, but there was a light source. And one of the odd things is about the apparent immense size of them and how they can sort of bend physics, or this is very arguable, admittedly. Some people will describe a craft on the outside as maybe being the size of a football field, let's say. And on the inside, it's vastly larger. So I don't know how that works, but if they're able to bend space and time, refract space and time, alter gravity to get here real quick, I imagine they can do stuff on the inside of the craft as well. So I've never flown the craft. Nobody said, here, Wes, good boy, take the wheel.
That would be
you
way
work
too
the
much.
brakes. No, I know. So I've never been asked to do that. I've just been a quiet observer. And in some cases, they seem to be, for me, translucent. I can see space through them.
Interesting.
I don't know if that's a feature, but it's as if they're see-through, at least from the inside out, not the other way around. So I don't know if that answers her question or not.
I think it does. And I think she also asked, do they share information, wisdom, tools, intelligence, and are they being helpful to our planet?
Most folks like me and a lot of people involved in ufology would say they're being helpful, and say that they've stepped in at times to prevent catastrophic things from happening here. That's what most would say. I don't know. I believe, I hope so in my heart of hearts, that that is true. Do they share stuff? My psi capability went up from them, from experiences with them. I never want to say I'm a healer. I'm not a healer, but I decided once I became more aware of the length and breadth of my experiences, suddenly that, I see people with a sore back or a sore arm or whatever. I wonder if I can help them. And I just started one day. I just started. And I've been told by people that do this that it feels to them like Reiki energy. And I don't know Reiki. I'm not trained in it. I do not claim to know it. But what I've done is all sorts of experiments, and I think this is all spawned from my interactions with these beings. All sorts of experiments, hands-on, hands-off, and at a great distance in little healing sessions. And they largely work. I don't know why they work, but they work. So I'm going to say that's attributable to them and my experiences with them, and that I didn't know I had such things before them.
That's interesting. My mom used to talk about that when I was a little girl. She'd be like, do you feel she would do this a lot. And she would like, I'll take care of your headache, or I'll take care of something. And it would happen every so often. She'd come in and she would do that and it would work. And you could feel the energy. That's interesting. Especially the way you were holding. Yeah, that's interesting.
Well, it starts as heat. I can feel my hand getting hot. I know when it's working. I can feel my hand or my hands getting hot. And if I'm in close proximity, a person will feel like the point of entry of energy, and it spirals out.
Interesting. And then Bad Luck Steve asked if you believe that they erased your memory.
I'm going to say, and my goodness, Todd has a list of questions. That's beautiful. So I'd be happy to get to as many of those as I can. I'm going to say not erased, but suppressed. In other words, I'm trying not to split hairs here. There are certain memories that are inaccessible. At least the full memory is inaccessible. I've been able to get the gist of it and some of the broad strokes, and nothing more, not even under hypnosis. And so it's we have humans have chemical restraints, right?
Yes.
We can restrain people chemically. They restrain people psychically, mentally. So I don't think they've erased any of my memory. I just think there are a few parts of it that are inaccessible. I cannot get to them, at least not yet.
And then I have a couple questions from Brandy. And one is something I've experienced throughout my lifetime is being called to bed is what I call it. This crazy urge to go, I have to go to sleep, I have to go to bed, I have to lay down, and then the sleep paralysis begins. Instead of the vivid dreams or whatever's going to happen. I remember that happening a lot when I was younger. And then she also wants to know about, have you ever felt any malice? And I think you have told me no before, but I could be wrong.
Can you rephrase the last one?
Have you ever felt any malice from them?
Okay. So the having to go to bed, I seem to recall you and I talked about this before.
Yeah.
And until then, I hadn't thought about it. And it's true. And it's inexplicable. Like I know my body pretty well at this stage. I know that there's no amount of caffeine on the planet that can keep me awake. It's counterproductive. If I go past a certain limit, it's just whatever. But at certain points, usually it's midday for me. It's like I've absolutely got to lay down, and I've absolutely got to lay down, and my head and my whole body sinks into the pillow and the bed, and it just overtakes me. And it if I do sleep, and if something does happen, it doesn't last long, but I had to give in to it. I cannot think of a way to combat it. As far as malice, very little. No, I'd have to say very little. There's a key experience I talk about, I think in my first book, where there was a mask put on myself and my ex and all that. I considered that to be malicious. I considered that to be not just intrusive, but scary. Maybe that's only one of 2 or 3 times I've ever felt such a thing. And then what I feel is the times that I've been, forgive the terms, a sperm donor, I felt revolted. And I didn't take it as malice. I just thought, you've got to be friggin' kidding me. I must be so stupid that I've fallen for this more than once. So I don't know if I hold malice toward them or just, what the heck? Why are you doing this?
Right. Yeah. What is your purpose? And have you ever asked them, Wes? Could you break out enough to ask them, why are you doing this?
So I've not been able to break out of the experience itself. So I'm trying to be polite and nice when I speak about this. Let's just say I've had to consummate each experience. And then the next morning or whenever I come out of it, it's like, Jesus, really? Did you really have to do that? This fallacy that some of us have, maybe it's not. Maybe there are some beautiful, angelic beings that you'd love to be intimate with. But when they trick you, when it's trick or treat and it's a trick, it's like, I can't believe I fell for that again. But then I probably had no choice, is my guess.
Yeah, you feel violated. It's a violation.
Yeah, it'd be a different thing. It was like, okay, that's set this up, that's broker this,
Right.
That's create terms and parameters. Let's draw up some legal papers, right? Doesn't work that way.
Can I have partial custody?
Yeah, I have to go off planet though, right?
Yeah, exactly. Which, it's really interesting if they are taking inbreeding and having hybrids of some kind. That would be very disheartening, especially for people that never had children or couldn't have children. What if we do have children somewhere? You know, that feeling. What if they are there?
Yeah, I mean,
What
you
a
hear some,
it's sad. That's very sad to me.
you hear
And
about
you have
insidious experiences that have been.
You said you've seen some of your children that they claim that are your offspring, correct?
Yeah, it's never, they're never forthcoming in terms of standing beside me saying, "Hey, Wes, have a look at your daughter or your son or your offspring." It's always I'm in a room. I'm in a room with some childlike things. Sometimes they really do look like children, and sometimes not at all. And I'm in a room with them, and I know, and this answers, I hope, an earlier question. I think Todd asked this question, what are they interested in? Emotion. 100% interested in emotion. This is what has been true with me largely, emotion and reaction. So I've been put in the room with these little creatures, and I think it's all to observe how I respond to that.
It's my bird, I'm sorry. My bird is really loud tonight. That was her. Hi, bird, bye, bird.
I'm being heckled.
Maggie. She's upset because she's not beside me, so she's got to let us know she's here. Yeah, that would be highly emotional for me if I was in that position. Like, I would want to strangle them.
You sort of, you do hear stories about, well-documented stories about women not going to full term.
Yes, absolutely.
There's lots of them. This is not fantasy. I wish it were.
Yeah, absolutely. I've heard that too. And that's very sad. So it does make you wonder what some of them are up to. If it is it just a species of them? It can't be all of them.
I can't imagine, DeeDee.
Like the Nordic. Yeah, like the Nordic ones seem to be very spiritual, from my understanding. Even in their presentation, they seem to be highly spiritual beings.
That's what I get too, and that's my twin is of that one of those species, one of the tall ones.
The very tall.
And she, I have to believe this because somebody I call my sister in Australia saw her brother or partner physically in her room while she was awake. So it's like, okay, so I don't know if that's my twin's partner or sister or brother or sibling, but it was male and it showed up to my friend.
Wow. How did she feel about that? It was probably a more spiritual experience than a fearful experience, I would assume.
Yeah, it was, she was doing some common everyday thing in the kitchen and turned around and there it was. And I don't know what transpired. It was brief, but she made a point to tell me, hey, I saw your twin's brother, husband, partner. And it's like, what? I didn't even know she had one. But why not, right?
Sure. Are you going to ask her that next time you see her, if she has a husband, partner, soulmate? Do they have soulmates like we do? That would be a very interesting question.
Well, under hypnosis, when we were sort of channeling her, the indication was they have families, and they live for an awful long time. I can't say exactly, at least hundreds of years, if not longer. And they're very strong on the family unit. And that's why I've always felt like around her, like I've gone home, like I'm around family.
Yeah, interesting. And it's interesting because of the tall ones that you have described, next to the grays, the smaller species, which people fear, and understandably so. So those are very different, contrasting. I wonder, they're very much probably a different species or tribe of beings, I would assume.
I think so. I think species is exactly right. Aliens have been described. You can look them up in various books. I don't know how people get this, but you can look it up in various books. Tall, short, wide, mantis-like, reptilian, gray, not gray, blonde. Just a huge variety, and it makes perfect sense to me. We have all this variety on one little dot, one little piece of Earth. So I can't just imagine.
Oh my goodness, yes. Amazing. Wes, how do people get your books? I know they're on Amazon, but can they order them from you?
If they want to write me a note, Wes at wesgroberts.com, I would be happy to send one out autographed personally.
All right. Are you still podcasting, Wes? Are you doing your podcast still?
See, you made me do it, right? When I was on the show last time, you said you listened to my podcast, that I podcast, and I said to you, and I did it, I said, I'm going back to it because you asked about it, and I did go back to it. So I've got at least one new episode, and I credit you for that.
Thank you. I can't wait to listen to it. You guys have to listen to this podcast. It's so interesting. You'll love it. What is your podcast called? The
WGR Report.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's everywhere. I joined a service that's now under Spotify, I think. So they distribute these things. So you should be able to find it just about everywhere. If not, let me know.
Okay. And, I'll have Wes back sometime soon on this or either my podcast, because I really enjoy talking to Wes. He's one of my faves. So if you have any questions, please, you can get a hold of me on social media, DeeDee Moonflyer. You can also contact Wes. So I want everyone to have a marvelous Friday. And please come back next week and tell Lesley I said hello. And of course, I understand things happen.
I will. No problem. Yeah, she wanted to be on the show, so I will tell her.
All right. And thank you, Todd Bates, for all your hard work. I appreciate you.
Thanks,
see everybody next week. Have a great evening.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.